We have to remember that this is totally foreign to most of the people that we work with. They don't know what's going on. So they want to be reassured. And, I joke, when they call us counselors, now I know why. Because you're the therapist a lot of times. And you're just talking them off a ledge that they don't even need to be on, but they don't know that.
All right. Welcome to the You Our Lawyer podcast. Lee Rudin, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
So I went to law school in Baton Rouge. I went to Southern University Law Center. Where did you go to law school?
I went to Tulane in New Orleans.
Okay. All right. And you're in New Orleans now. Is that where you're from?
No, I grew up in Jersey. I went to Tulane for undergrad and then couldn't think of a really good reason to leave. I applied to schools up in the Northeast where I'm from, but then decided I like it here. And I didn't want to regret leaving. So I went right through to Tulane Law. And I joked that the gumbo got in my blood and I never left.
I think that's really funny because I'm from Ohio, went to Baton Rouge, and then came right back to Ohio.
But I would not have stayed in Baton Rouge, right? New Orleans is in Baton Rouge. Like there's a difference.
Yeah. No, there is. It's like New York City to the rest of New York. I get it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right, cool. So from Jersey, did you know lawyers when you were growing up?
My aunt is a lawyer, but I wouldn't say that like her being a lawyer had really any impact on my life. She was the only lawyer I knew young. And then as I got older, I went to summer camp and a guy who was one of my group leaders at one point, and then I was a counselor and then I worked under him. He was in the same capacity, but I then now was a part of the staff. He was a lawyer, and that was kind of an interesting perspective because I saw him, kind of in the twilight of his career with his younger son at a camp where he would like do legal work at night. He had brought in Wi-Fi and had a computer set up, and he would handle his cases in the evening, but also like be able to be a dad and be at camp with his kid all day long, which I thought was super cool. So that was an interesting perspective.
I think so, because you were immediately seeing that being a lawyer means you could be flexible.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. I loved that. I thought that was a really interesting feature. And I figured like maybe it was the kind of work he was doing, but now in hindsight, I see it's a lot of the work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is a question I've never asked anyone else because it's just never come up. When I lived in Baton Rouge, I ran home for winters because I missed the change of seasons. Do you stay in New Orleans the whole time?
So I don't miss the change of seasons. I said, if I never have to shovel another driveway in my life, I'll be a happy man. So let's put that out there. And this is the distinction I make, right? We're about to get into what I call the hotter than the devil's nutsack season. Okay. So that's now. It's like 90 degrees outside and it's freaking middle of May. But the nice part about that is we can travel in the summer, right? I have 2 young kids. Like that's when you go away or that's when you do things. And so what? It's hot. You sweat, you change your clothes, you take 4 showers a day, but you can do everything. When you're up in the Northeast and it's snowy and you can't go outside and you can't do anything that you would want to do in even remotely temperate weather. So you kind of get that summertime sadness here. Like you get those winter blues up in the Northeast, but that's also you can make your way down here different than you can when it's, snowed in. So I'll take this any day.
Yeah, that's true. It's all relative because you can only go sledding for so long and then you're frostbitten or whatever. But yeah, Just take a couple showers and keep moving.
That's it. That's it.
That's true. Okay, so Lee, I love your branding. It's Get Rude, right? It's all over your website. It's like, oh, stop being nice, get rude. And I think it's really a really good match because you do personal injury law. So motorcycle accidents, rideshare accidents, 16-wheelers, all of those kind of things. Why did you decide to specialize in that?
So this started where I was on the defense side and I was doing the same work, but working for insurance companies or working for corporations. And I'll say it in 2 ways. First of all, I started helping some people that I knew and realized I really liked helping people. You get a different kind of satisfaction when you win a case for an individual than you do for that corporation. Totally different. The other part of it is, not altruistic, but I watched some of these idiots that I was working against, that I was writing these big checks because like our car rear-ended them and their person was hurt and they didn't do anything. They were terrible lawyers, but they got the client. And I said, I could be that idiot. And so that's kind of how it began. I started helping some people that I knew, and then, one beget two, and two beget four. And then all of a sudden you've got this stable of people that have come to you, trusting you with a problem. And then when I had the opportunity to really lean into this, I said, I think when I started playing with the brand in the space that I was in, I said, I think this is going to work, and give it time, and it's starting to work.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a really important distinction, right? If you were an adoptive or a family lawyer, get rude is not the proper motto. But
Right.
for your practice area, absolutely. I think it makes
I
sense.
agree. And, I joke, it's not be rude, it's get rude, and like there's nuance here. Of course, like I know why people call sometimes. I know what the ads look like. I understand. With that said, sometimes you get more bees with honey. So like when I get an adjuster on the phone and they're like, I really was dreading this call, but you're not so bad. I'm like, I know. And I give them that same shtick, right? Like it's not be rude, it's get rude. And, I just want you to get me to where I need to be so I can do the best for my client. And if that means be nice to you, great. And if it means, throwing up the double birds and telling you we're filing a lawsuit and I'll get it in front of someone else, that too.
Right. Yeah. I think the important thing is that you can do both, but also you're getting the attention. And that's what you need. You probably, well, I can't say, but let's say 10 people see your ad, but 7 of them actually sign with you. Those margins are fantastic. Or even if it's the 7 that call, that's still really a really good position to be in.
All right. So here's what I'll tell you. I'll make 2 points on that. We are in an attention economy. You cannot get anybody to stop for more than 10 seconds if you don't do something to catch their eye, right? They're doom scrolling. You got guys with billboards and TV. And I spoke on this in October, and I said, you spend all this money to have a billboard. You spend all this money to have TV commercials. And what are people doing? Sad to say, they're scrolling on their phones during your commercials, driving by your billboards, right, when they shouldn't be. So what do? I've gone digital. I said, let me try to get as interesting as I can on social media so that people, it stops the scroll. They say, what the heck is that? Why is that guy wearing a costume when he's a lawyer? And then maybe they click the link and they go into the profile and like, oh, he's a real lawyer. And like, oh, he does some good things. And I like that guy. That's pretty funny. I should follow this guy. I should hire him when something comes up. That's the idea.
Yeah, it is because you're correct. People's, like the currency of the world right now is attention. At sometimes it was money. Typically it's always power. But if you don't get their attention, you really can't get either of the other two.
Here's the problem, right? You said it. And if you look at the statistics, Morgan & Morgan, right? Biggest personal injury firm in the country. They spend more, I think, on outdoor and TV than some of these, than most of the major corporations in our country. Okay. So putting that out there, I think the data is that they don't even have 20% in their own home market. So they don't have 20% of the cases in any of the markets that they're in. So if that's the biggest player in the advertising space, think about it. I don't need 10 people to stop. I need 1 or 2. And all of a sudden, we've got this flourishing firm and we're doing it at a fraction of what these big guys are doing.
Yeah. But you also have the risk-taking ability in deciding you'll do it yourself, in deciding I'll put on a costume and this does not make me any less intelligent or less of a business person, right? So there's that big stigma, but I think we learned that in law school. I remember taking professional responsibility and people were like, I can't send flyers. I can't be too broad with my marketing. And a lot of lawyers internalize that to mean they could not market effectively. And it's not true.
I agree with you. And I think, when I try to distill this down, I say to people, in what world would you start a business and then not tell anybody what you do? And so, of course, there's the hand-to-hand method of networking and telling people, but you're not literally walking around to every individual saying, I'm a lawyer, I'm a lawyer, I'm a lawyer. So what do? I do silly things on the internet. I give out a ton of merch. Every day I'm wearing one of my own shirts. And if someone's like, I like that, let me see the back. This shirt, right? Stop being polite on the front. Back says, get rude. I give them my elevator pitch. If they want one, I said, all right, give me your address and your size and I'll send it to you. And I do. I have a spreadsheet coming to see how many of the FedEx packages that we sent this year, like how much was marketing related to people with gear and how much was case expense related. Because I just want to know, hey, what are we actually doing here? Who's asked for things? Let's get them in our database, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I think it's really smart and I think it's creative, which is the whole point of this podcast, right? I started You Are a Lawyer to kind of humanize lawyers and the legal conversations because we're so much more than what we do in the courtroom. Would you have called yourself a creative person before explaining all the things you do with marketing and sales?
You know what's funny? I think that when you think of someone who's creative, you think, oh, like, are you a painter? Do you do photography? Like in more of the traditional creative arts. And so my answer is no. But the things that I love are creative in different ways, right? I love movies and music and going to concerts. And when I was a kid, now that I think back on things, these stupid videos that I do, why am I relatively effective at them? Well, I used to love pro wrestling as a kid. So I would do these like, in the shower, you're pretending you're a wrestler and you're giving a promo, right? So that probably helped a little bit with my ability to deliver a speech. And then I remember being a kid and I had one of those black and white composition notebooks and I would write parody songs. I would like take like a Livin' La Vida Loca or like some silly pop song and just write a Weird Al Yankovic version of that on some theme that I came up with. So you start doing that and you're like, wait a minute, that's why I can write the Rude Grinch or why I can be Rudy Boucher from The Waterboy. It's like, because that stuff is in the back of my subconscious somewhere.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it ties into not going too far away from who you actually are, right? Not to say that the like shucky stuff is your entire personality, but how you can carry that along with you. Because I think with lawyers, we carry our legal education with us, right? For you, I think especially as running a business, you're probably using a lot of the stuff you learned from law school, stuff you learned from other people, your mentors, that you wouldn't have necessarily said that one thing is going to be important, but it turned out to be important.
Yeah, and the way I've put it, you're not all going to put the costume on. You all don't have the same last name where you can like get rude, or maybe that's not your personality. So you want to be polite, right? You're going to push politeness, but that's okay. Like you just need to be authentically you, and you just have to be the best version of boring if boring is what you are, right? Because there's a guy in Buffalo who like that's who he is. His caricature is the most boring guy, but that's what he leans into. And so now like if I want that boring, wears the blue suit with the brown shoes, like carries the briefcase lawyer, like that's my guy. And again, you don't have to have every client. You just have to have some and find your niche, lean into it hard, and then make sure that you are present and repeating your presence over and over and over, because the only way to build these relationships is to make sure that you're invested in them and you're not like a hit it and quit it type sponsor or this or that, because otherwise you really are just going to piss money away.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about being a business owner because you're running the law firm, Rudin Law. What made you decide that it was time for you to start your own show?
I didn't.
Oh,
They decided for me.
oh, I missed that. I was doing some research. I didn't see that part.
Yeah. I mean, as I guess will come as no surprise to you, I don't really like to be told certain things can't be a certain way. My favorite thing to hate was when someone would tell me, oh, that's because that's the way we've always done it. And I was like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. So when I was, and look, the last firm that I was at, it was a defense firm. I love those guys. I was a law clerk there. I remained friends with a bunch of them for a decade. They tried to hire me once. Then they hired me eventually a second time. They came back around and I was ready. And it was a firm I thought I was going to be a lead partner with to help grow the firm with a buddy of mine. And honestly, it just ended up that the way that this plaintiff practice of mine grew within their defense practice, our interests didn't align anymore, because they said to me, hey, Lee, like you're doing a fantastic job here, but we're a defense firm fundamentally. And although there hasn't been a real conflict yet, there's a spiritual one in what you're trying to do. Like we can't grow a plaintiff firm in our defense firm. And they also, I don't think I know they didn't like that the splits on the money were better on the plaintiff side. And that was their split. Like they created it. I saw the opportunity. I went for it. And they said, well, we have to adjust the splits. And I said, no, we had a deal. You're not going to walk the deal back. And so combining the fact they wanted to limit the kind of people I could help or the kind of work I could bring in, and then take more of the pie of the work that I was bringing in, I said, this is time to go. And that was it. And I didn't know what I was doing. And I just said, I'm going to figure this out.
But I'm sure the way they've always done it was we keep it this way or we adjust the splits, and then you're like, well, that's not enough. So
I think that we are in an era now, right? It doesn't matter if you're in the plaintiff injury space, if you do insurance defense, if you do any kind of legal work, where this is going to change in our industry in the next year is going to be exponential. And, you know, with the availability of AI and offshore staffing, like you can do so much with so little that a lot of people are going to take these opportunities to say, you know what, let me try it myself. And look, I'll caution people, owning a business, particularly a plaintiff injury business, is not for the faint of heart. So understand what you're getting yourself into, right? I joked that when I came out, I was the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker. And, you know, because you literally are, like, you're the social media guy, you're doing accounting, you might be running marketing, plus
and the janitor.
And the janitor, right? The building that I'm in, we just bought. And I said, they're like, well, okay, so now I am, right? I'm taking out trash because I know the trash is coming tomorrow, and like, what's got to go. So someone's got to do it. You know, my team does it too, but like if they miss it or I do it first, like we're all part of the team. So just look before you leap. I'm not saying don't leap, but talk to folks like me, talk to anybody you can, gather information and see like, what do I need to do to prepare myself to take that next step? And once you're comfortable with that, go for it.
Yeah. So your story is unique because you were building a plaintiff section within a defense firm. I have seen a lot of really big law firms start to encourage their lawyers to build a brand within the larger firm, right? Kind of so that you're walking parallel. Do you think if you had that opportunity still on the defense side, you may have still been working with someone?
I don't, you know, the one thing that I repeat and I hope people like take to heart is that this is not an ego play for me, right? Like the fact that I am building a brand, it's really for the benefit of the firm. You know, if I had let's say I came out with a partner and the partner had a better name, then this firm would be named that partner's name, because I'm not in it so that people know who Lee Rudin is. I'm in it so that the firm does well. And what I see as the conduit to that is people knowing who Lee Rudin is. Because in the end, like, yeah, they hire brands, but they hire lawyers. And referrals come in because they know you. And it's hard because at that time, you have to really explain to the client, look, these are my team members. I've trained them. I've brought them in. You're going to get from them like you would get from me, and you can always get to me, but I can't help everybody individually. Otherwise, I could only help a few people.
Yeah.
And I want to help more people. So,
no, I think that's a great distinction because you hire the firm because you trust me. You have to trust the person that you're giving the money to. People still aren't in a place where they're just like, money's willy-nilly. But also, because you trust me, trust my team and trust that I know the people I've hired.
Some people, I mean, this is the world, right? Some people are skeptical, clients, rightfully so. And some lawyers are pieces of shit. So they have reason to be skeptical. You know, I have a guy coming in, and when we're done with this episode, I have a guy coming in, and we didn't get a great settlement for him, right? Like, he's not going to get thousands and thousands of dollars. But his case was a steaming pile of shit. And we took this chicken shit and we made it into chicken salad. Like, the fact that he's even getting any money is insane. But like, we really pulled rabbits out of two different hats, found a pot for him and said, hey man, like, and he actually is appreciative, although he's asked a million questions to see that we're not pulling a fast one and hiding money. And when I show him, like, dude, we got this and this and this. We got you treatment. We got discounts on the treatment. We got money over here and money over there. And like, we're cutting fees and they're cutting fees and everyone's doing it so you get something out of this. I hope he's appreciative because this wasn't easy and we're not making a boatload of money. We're making a pittance, but we did it to help a guy.
Well, you're saying so much and it's really, really valuable because When people see a brand, and especially one that they could recognize or they think is so established because it's so consistent, they equate that to money, right? Oh my gosh, you have all of this. And yes, I'm sure you are enjoying yourself, but that also doesn't mean that I'm the shitty piece of shit lawyer that you also knew or that you're comparing me to or that you've seen on TV or whatever.
Well, look, the truth is, Kyla, like I hope I'm enjoying myself in a year, 2 years, 3 years, but right now I'm not. Right now, literally everything that we are getting, we're rolling back in. It's a lot of deferred gratification. Like I dumped a bunch into the marketing. I dumped a bunch into this building because I just thought like it was important in the longer play. But I promise you, like if you looked at my numbers, you'd be like, why are you doing this, Lee? Like you were doing better when you were working at these other firms. But a lot of good advice that I've gotten is it's not what you're getting today. It's the seeds that you plant for tomorrow. And that I'm comfortable that we're doing excellently when I'm comparing myself to who we were before and just understanding where we could be, should be in the young trajectory of this firm.
Yeah, absolutely. So you started this firm in 2023?
June 1, 2023. So we're about to make 3 years.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thanks.
What is one of the most surprising things about running a business?
You asked me offline, you said, what would be something you learned from a prior firm that you took with you? And I've since seen both of my past managing partners. And I said both to both of them, because I still have relationships with both of them. And I look back on working with them fondly. And I said to both of them, I have a new appreciation for cash flow. New appreciation. Because payroll doesn't stop. The rent doesn't stop. And when you're banging on somebody's door to get their hourly billing in, or when you're telling somebody else, hey, like, where's the check on your collection? I see why now, because you got to pay the bills. And that's how we pay the bills. So you got to go to your team members and say, hey, time has to be in, bills have to be submitted. We got to get the money back. Otherwise, how do we pay?
Yeah. Do you find it to be distracting, or has the burden decreased with you coming up on your third anniversary of being a business owner?
I think that the challenges are ever evolving, right? You work on building a foundation. You want to make sure your team is trained and doing what they're supposed to do. To me, like where my focus has always been is get the client, because you can, if all went to shit, I could fire everybody and do it myself. I've done it before, right? And I know that I'm capable, and I know I have some people on my team that are capable. But if you don't get the client, nobody survives. The business doesn't survive. You can't pay your team members. And if you care about them, which we do, like we want to make sure they have jobs and can support their families. So I'm acutely focused on that. And I really want to provide great client service. So like what grinds my gears the most is when we've taught somebody how to do something and I get the message of, hey, I haven't heard from anybody. So then I go look and I'm like, well, you have heard from people, like a lot actually, but it makes me uncomfortable that there might be truth behind that. And so I have to go check, because that's the number one gripe amongst lawyers, amongst injury lawyers, is communication. And that's the easiest thing. The no update is sufficient.
And I would even say it's the most important, because when people don't have to guess about the next steps, when they're constantly in communication with you, then they actually do feel that trust, that security, which they may not be able to articulate, but it's enforcing the trust that they already had when they hired you. It's saying, yeah.
And we have to remember that this is totally foreign to most of the people that we work with. It really doesn't matter. I mean, unless you're dealing with a corporate client or an insurance adjuster who has that familiarity because they do it all the time, probably the person on the other side is scared shitless. They don't know what's going on. They think that silence is bad. They never think silence is good. So they want to be reassured. And, I joke, when they call us counselors, now I know why. Because you're the therapist a lot of times. And you're just talking them off a ledge that they don't even need to be on, but they don't know that.
They don't know that. And that's when we tap into our legal education and training and we're like, we are counselors at law. Let's soothe this situation. Yeah. I like that. Get the client. That might be the title of the episode.
That's it. Get the client. And the thing is, and I've had this conversation with other lawyers in my space, some of it is table stakes, right? Provide good customer service. Be a decent lawyer, right? Like don't be an idiot. But The other stuff, that's where you elevate from table stakes to being really exceptional. And in my mind, you can control it. I say to my team, like, you have to give a shit about these clients. And if you don't, you have to fake it. But it's one or the other. Otherwise, you
Yeah.
can't survive in this business. It's too tough.
Yeah. No, that's very, very true. It's very true. So, Lee, I ask this question of every guest that comes on the show. What would you say to a young lawyer, 5 years practicing or less, or a law student about what they can do with their law degree?
Anything. I mean, that's the truth of it. I never understood why people would go to law school to not become a lawyer, right? That's so what I would tell a law student, what I would tell, I always had a law clerk who was at Tulane who wasn't a law student yet, but wanted to go to law school. And then she had some time at the end of her term and wanted to come work with us. And I was like, that's a great idea. You need to see what the day to day is like, because the idea of being a lawyer sounds great. But do you like to research and write? Do you want to talk to clients? What do you like? Because if it's not for you, then do something else.
Yeah, I remember I had an internship before law school with the only lawyer I knew, and they were an insurance lawyer, and all I was doing was filing paper. And I sillily said, "Oh, but I'll be different." And I was not different. It was all paperwork and transactional. And I was like,
It's
"Oh, okay."
but also understand that just because you like to research and write and you want to be on a team that does litigation, it doesn't mean you ever have to talk to a client. You just have to find the right place to put your butt in the right seat. Maybe you're the brief writer. Maybe you're writing appeals and this is what you do. You're a machine that can write a great brief. Cool. And then somebody else wants to go be the person who argues in court. I joke, use a band as an analogy. Like, someone's got to be the front man, but someone's got to hold the bass line. If they're not holding the bass line, that song doesn't hum.
Yeah, it's true. I like that. Then you got to have a conductor, you got to have a trumpet somewhere. Yeah, you got to have it all.
That's
Okay.
it.
Yeah, I like it. Very cool. Well, Lee, thank you so much for telling everybody about the Get Rude brand. I have listeners all over the country. I have some international ones, so I know they'll be really excited. And I don't
Awesome.
talk to too many New Orleans attorneys, so this is good.
Love it. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah. Will you let everyone know where they can find you?
All right. Yeah. So we try to idiot proof this because the world's full of idiots, right? So here we go. The website is getrude.com. If you want to email me, my email is lee@getrude.com. You can find us on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Get Rude Law. And from your touch tone phone, we are 833 Get Rude. So there you go.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.